Right. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nathan Duty, the Inside Sales Rep here to Assurance IT, and I want to thank all of you for attending our virtual Lunch and Learn today with Lightbeam AI. Now, in today's session, you can expect to hear from Jane Reese, the Canada Sales Lead, and her colleague, Brian Durkin, the Senior Sales Engineer. I'll let them have some time to introduce themselves in just a moment, but I want to set some expectations for today's session. What you can expect to see is an overview on what Lightbeam has to offer, the method to uncovering hidden and sensitive data within your organization and environment, and how to leverage AI to minimize risks and vulnerabilities before it's too late. And of course, so much more. And as always, just in the interest of time, I will be shutting up in a moment, handing it off to the lovely folks at Lightbeam to give you a quick introduction, to speak a little bit about Lightbeam's approach to security, privacy, and governance, at which point they'll run through a quick demo, and then we can close it off with Q&A and, of course, plugging the next Lunch and Learn. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Reese. As Nathan introduced, I am the Canadian lead and country manager for Lightbeam based in the Toronto region. I'm joined today by Brian Durkin, who is the senior pre-sales engineer.
Hello, everyone.
I'm going to share my screen, and then we are going to, so the premise of today, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to Lightbeam, introduce you to the solution, and then we are going to do a walkthrough of the UI. So Lightbeam at its core, what are we? Who are we? We are an organization that is a zero trust data protection solution. What does this mean? We're a tool that scans your data repositories to understand where sensitive data resides across the multiple data applications that you have. Today, there is a spread of data across multiple platforms, and understanding where that data resides is absolutely critical. In this slide, what it showcases is the myriad of applications that may be utilized within your environment today. There are many that may not be there. There are many that are there. We are continually adding data application support. How we work is we connect to these data sources via APIs. We do not push any agents into your environment. So it's an incredibly seamless application integration. By scanning these data sources, we can give you a full overview of what sensitive data you have, whose sensitive data you have, on which applications that sensitive data resides. By understanding this, policies can be created to mitigate risks with automation by means of redaction, deletion, or archival. Lightbeam's approach is very different to many of the other solutions that you see in the market today. We utilize an approach called entity resolution. What we will do is, as we are scanning the data, we look at the context of the data. So a simple string of digits, as you will see on the screen, we will take that and understand whose data that is. So if you are looking to understand, sorry, I'm just going, oops, my apologies. If you're looking to understand what data you have, we look at the content, we look at the context, and we map that information together. So we are looking at email addresses, names, SIN numbers, PII data, PHI data, so that you can understand what is connected and how this is related to entities. Lightbeam reviews entities as human beings and as organizations. The critical aspect that is impacting organizations today is also AI. The utilization of AI within organizations is growing. There are many AI tools that are organization driven, but there are many people that are bringing AI tools into the organization to better their ability to do their job. And there may be tools that are not authorized by the organization, ChatGPT tools. But what we are starting to see is that organizations or staff are using these tools to improve their work productivity. But with enterprise data, 80% of that data is unstructured. 75% of the knowledge workers are using AI at work, and they're bringing their own tools in. And what this is doing is creating fragmented data. So these security tools are creating, these AI tools are creating risks that can often quickly or accurately find, map, and protect the sensitive data across the organization. And without a complete approach to data security, looking at the privacy and compliance, you are staying exposed to breaches, ransomware attacks, and compliance issues. So understanding who has access to what and where that sensitive data resides across the organization is absolutely critical to lock down the sensitive data and mitigate any risk within the organization. So how can you leverage Lightbeam to lower the risks of sensitive data exposure within your organization? So by looking at this slide, we can scan for the data. We can drive governance. So we can discover overshared content in, for argument's sake, SharePoint and other data stores. We can limit the access to that data to those who should have access to that data. We can limit the public exposure. So we can find what data and sensitive data may have public exposure to it and remove that exposure. We look at your data security controls. So that would allow you to create redaction, deletion, and control on who has access to that sensitive data. We can also give you the ability to alert when that data is being accessed. So that is your human review process. And from a compliance perspective, to address your regulatory and legal considerations, ensuring that you are addressing all the compliances that may impact your organization today. And whilst we appreciate that across the myriad of business sectors, there are many different compliances across finance, across education, across banking. And we integrate into many of the applications, DLP solutions, document management solutions, to drive the governance and privacy rules that you need to mitigate any of the AI compliances that you need today. So without further ado, Brian, I think we can head into the...
Excellent. Great. So the Lightbeam dashboard that we're looking at is designed to give you answers to questions about what we're finding in your environment. You can see the data sources that you're connected to, the types of sensitive data that's being discovered, the document category or labels that are being applied to those documents, as well as the individuals whose data you're tracking or discovering. And again, when we talk about those individuals, we're not talking about the database administrator or the the file system administrator. We're talking about the the human beings for whom that is a passport, a driver's license, a credit card number, etc. Lightbeam's also able to give you those alerts, as Jane mentioned, as to critical issues that are in the environment, or trigger automated responses when data is discovered in the wrong places. But let's start with data sources. One of the big advantages of Lightbeam is a single pane of glass to see into all of your data repositories, right? Some of the competitors in the space specialize in either databases or unstructured data file systems. Lightbeam's able to connect to, all of the applications and data sources that are most commonly used by organizations. So whether they're file systems or databases or applications like Salesforce or HubSpot or ServiceNow, where data is also being stored, you're able to go and see, exactly what has been discovered in those environments. As Lightbeam discovers data it's going to categorize it. And as Jane showed in the slides, Lightbeam's using artificial intelligence techniques to recognize the attributes, right? Is it a credit card number? Is it is it a driver's license or a passport number? Not just using machine learning and large language models, but also using algorithmic checks to make sure that the data is correct, as well as leveraging a source of truth to do exact matches wherever possible to get the exact data categorization wherever possible. So as you're going through analyzing your readiness, right, you want to know what data has been exposed, what's out there. One of the examples I like to give is, hey, as part of the new employee onboarding process, certainly here in the United States, an employee has to show proof of eligibility for employment. And usually it's, here's a photograph of my passport. And after they're done with it, that passport should be removed, right? We don't need a copy of it. But that doesn't always happen. So wouldn't it be good to know where in the environment you're storing data like passport numbers? Lightbeam's able to show you exactly where in the environment we're finding that sort of data. I've got data on SharePoint. I find them in Jira, an S3 bucket, even in email, right? Microsoft Outlook. So as I look at things like SharePoint, I can also see how many people have access to that, right? What is the exposure? Are there any assignments for permissions that might be excessive? Lightbeam lets you see all of that and set policies up so that you can get an alert wherever policy violations are occurring. But let's take a closer look at SharePoint. What has Lightbeam covered in this particular environment that was of concern? And we can see that there's a document here, a screenshot. It's a PNG formatted file, and it looks like it contains a lot of passport numbers. So let's take a look at this document. Now, for the security folks on the call, I like to point out Lightbeam does enforce the concept of role-based access control. So I'm logged in as an administrator into this environment, and I'm able to preview this document or view it. Lightbeam isn't storing the document. We're going to pull it in live from this link that you can see connecting to our SharePoint. But we're not storing the document locally. We're just storing metadata about what is it that we've discovered in the document and where else have we discovered it. So anything that you see masked off here, Lightbeam has analyzed the document and determined that it is indeed sensitive information. So if I unmask these things, you can see that the numbers look like credit card numbers, and the numbers that aren't masked, they really don't look like credit card numbers. Not enough digits, too many digits. And there's no cross-reference to an individual, right? We can see the entities to whom this data belongs to validate, hey, even though it doesn't pass the algorithmic checks or the machine learning model checks, this might be a credit card number. In this case, it's not. So we don't have any confidence that that would be a credit card number. The other thing I like to point out about this document is it's an image document. A lot of solutions that are analyzing your data, they struggle with images. Lightbeam incorporates an OCR technique to determine what is in the image, as well as other checks using machine learning to verify, hey, if this was instead of a screenshot of an Excel spreadsheet, if I was looking at an image of an actual passport document, Lightbeam would recognize it as such and know where the sensitive bits were in that document to mask it off. So what we're looking at here is, with a high degree of confidence using multiple techniques, we're looking at the context for sure, but that's not the only factor. We're looking at, does it pass the algorithmic check? Does it belong to an individual that I know and I'm tracking in order to do an exact match? And to whom is this data accessible, right? So I've got very sensitive data. I can see the users that it's accessible by, as well as the groups. And now I've got a very good idea through this analysis of what kind of data exists in my environment so that I can look at setting up policies to enforce that, whatever policy enforcement I want to include as to, where sensitive data is being stored so that I know, hey, if it's going to be a co-pilot or some other AI that's looking at the data, what is it going to be reading and ingesting so that I can be prepared for those circumstances. One of the other nice things about Lightbeam here is that this document is clearly just a screenshot, right? It's even labeled as such. If you're a Mac user, you'll recognize the file name format as being the built-in screen capture capability. But this really doesn't match a standard document format that I use for business. So now if this were something like a new employee onboarding form that HR was using, Lightbeam allows you to classify that document so that you can leverage that going forward as, hey, this is something that I use as part of my normal business. Let me just employee onboarding form. And I can say, hey, this is an HR document, and we'll just call it HR others. From now on, whenever Lightbeam finds documents like this one, a 3-column table containing passport number, credit card number, I want to apply this classification to those documents going forward. And then I can use that as one of the criteria for setting policy to determine how I want Lightbeam to react, right? So the more information we have, the better as far as policy enforcement goes. We can also apply labels. Jane mentioned for organizations using DLP solutions. One of the challenges with DLP solutions is often that they're very good at protecting the data that's been marked as sensitive from leaving the organization. The challenge for those is that they don't necessarily have the ability to very accurately identify document classifications as well as the types of sensitive data within those documents to properly apply labels that can be consumed by the agents that are doing that last mile inspection before allowing a user to do things like cut and paste from a document or attach it to an email. Lightbeam obviously is going to get a much higher degree of confidence, right? We hear from some customers that their existing DLP solutions only anywhere from 40 to 70% accurate. And Lightbeam, by using these multiple techniques to analyze documents, gets into the mid 90s to high 90s, 95 to 99% accuracy when we're leveraging those exact match sources of truth. So when you look at DLP as an investment in technology, as an investment in a way of securing yourself from breaches, you really want that higher degree of confidence so that you can actually turn on the enforcement part of DLP. That might be difficult to turn on if you're 40% accuracy. More often than not, you're triggering on a false positive and blocking someone from doing their job. Lightbeam is capable to apply labels to documents. You can do it here manually through the document viewer interface, or you can set up policies to automatically apply those labels, again, saving your administrators and your end users from the challenge of trying to figure out how to apply a label to a document and then doing that operation correctly. So, as we look at the intimate details here of the document and the types of things we're looking at, we can also go back and look at, whose data is where in my environment. So if I look at entities, Lightbeam is going to leverage the, those sources of truth. You would label a database as an employee database or a customer database or maybe a vendor or partner database or agents so that you can very accurately determine what is your relationship to the individual or to the organization that you're doing business with, so that you can apply policy based on whose data it is that the policy is applying to. If you're working in the pharmaceutical industry and you're running a clinical trial, you're going to want to deal with those users' data a little bit differently than you would deal with than you would deal with the employee data or partner data. So looking at someone like Christopher, I know 11 things about Christopher. I can see the individuals that have access to Christopher's data. Right now, I'm just classifying Christopher as a human being. But where is this data in my environment, right? If it is an employee data, is it in the proper location? If it's a customer or a patient data, am I storing appropriate information, right? What sensitive information have I got on the individual and where is their data? And as these alerts are indicating, are any of those detections triggering a policy violation? For someone like Christopher, his data shouldn't be in OneDrive or SharePoint. It should only be in that Postgres database. And now I can trigger an alert, let that OneDrive or SharePoint administrator know that they're storing data inappropriately. Again, the goal here is to get ahead of the sprawl of data so that you can properly secure all of your data sources with the appropriate level of caution dependent on what kind of data is being stored in those locations. So as we look at someone like Christopher, how is it that we've put all of this data together, right? We can see for Christopher, we're finding multiple entries, and this is demo data, obviously, so some of these entries are going to be the same. But what we're using is an anchor, right? A key value, something like a social security or social insurance number, or a phone number that would hopefully be unique, right? Lightbeam lets you select what is the key value that you're going to look at across all your databases. Certainly not the name, but a social insurance number, a phone number, an email address that would be unique for that individual across all of your data sets so that you can say, hey, I found something that says, has Christopher's email in it. Now I know this belongs to Christopher. Similar to the way in Jane's slide, the example that showed, hey, this is a medical record number. It belongs to someone named David. Lightbeam starts to stitch together all those instances of where the data is located in the environment and who it belongs to so that you can trigger those policy rules wherever possible. Lightbeam does also, for folks in Quebec who are dealing with Law 25, let you, as you're associating all that data with individuals, use that mapping of the data as the input into a DSAR request for an individual, or right to be forgotten request. Please show me all the information you have about me. Usually, anybody that's done this on a regular basis knows that the heavy lift for completing these sorts of requests for users is the data discovery and validation step. And Lightbeam's already done all of that for you, right? We've located the information that belongs to the individual. We know what data it is, where it is in the environment, and we can very quickly assemble the report to be shared with the individual that made the request, right? So as far as being able to respond quickly within the amount of time allocated by regulators, you certainly are able to complete that as a benefit of having entity resolution enabled in your Lightbeam environment. The other thing that lets us see is where are we sharing those individuals' data? We're often sharing data with key partners or vendors, agencies, etc. Being able to see where you've shared that information externally is very important. For example, my demo company here uses Hitano Security as a security consultant, and we can see by analyzing the permission settings on shares and by watching the email traffic flow, what data have we shared with folks in the Hitano Security domain. So I can see I've shared 12 individuals' data, and the type of data that we've included in those shares, certainly the driver's license is something that might be considered very sensitive. So that if we did get a request from an individual to do a right to be forgotten request, data subject request, we can let Hitano Security know that that individual's data was included. If Hitano Security were to suffer a breach, we also can see immediately and very quickly exactly what kind of data was included in what we shared with them, so that we can appropriately gauge our response to the incident, either for law enforcement or regulators This really gives us a very nice picture as to what is our exposure in the event of an external incident. We can also see the same sort of view looking at data sources. Let's pick on that S3 bucket. If I had a nickel for every improperly secured S3 bucket that resulted in a newsworthy breach, I'd have a pretty good handful of nickels. So if you were to find yourself in that same sort of situation where, hey, we had a share or a data source that got compromised, how quickly would you be able to respond, right, to regulators, law enforcement, your own internal processes to let folks know, what was there, right? In this case, 116 people's data that includes very highly sensitive data like passport, credit card, driver's license, and social security numbers. Now, 116 people might not seem like a lot, which is exactly the point, right? If I'm tracking data for 100,000 subscribers, say, and I know that I've only lost data for 116, the gauged response here would be an enormous cost savings to my organization. So being able to see where the data is, being able to classify it accurately and with a high degree of confidence allows you to turn on automation processes, things like these playbooks. And Lightbeam is designed with policy settings to let you see where you're sharing data externally or internally, perhaps excessively or inappropriately. Where is data being discovered that might be inappropriately stored, right? Just like storing sensitive data in that SharePoint or S3 bucket. Have I got any data that I need to make sure that I'm removing in a timely fashion? Data curation, data sprawl is another point of exposure for folks where, if I'm only required to retain that passport information until I've completed the verification process for the new employee, anytime I find passport data in my environment that's older than some number of days, weeks, months, retention policy would let you put up a automated response to let you know when you've got data at risk. So here's an example, right? Last modified time more than a day ago that contains certain types of sensitive data or is certain types of classifications of documents. And we can also take a look at the types of alerts, right? Here we've got an example. We've got something in OneDrive that all of these documents, 332 documents, we find that they contain sensitive information and have been retained for too long. The person who's assigned this ticket can come and take a review of these things and perform an operation like, hey, these documents are inappropriately stored. Let's go out and archive them or remove those documents directly. So all in all, that's a fairly brief picture. I do want to make sure we're leaving ample time here for questions from the audience, but hopefully that gives you a good picture of how Lightbeam can help you discover where in your environment sensitive data is being stored, what kind of sensitive data it is that you're storing, who that data belongs to, and what is the status of the policies that you've established to make sure that that data remains properly secured.
If you do have any questions, anything like that, you can expect a follow-up from me. Feel free to lay it on me. And of course, we can set up some time to discuss a little further what kind of opportunities or projects you have coming up. That's about it. I really thank everyone for attending. Thank you so much, Brian and Jane, for attending today. And thank you so much, Cam, for setting this up. And of course, as always, you can expect that bonus from us coming to you very soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.